Right. Hey, everybody. I'm Petru Katana. I'm an integrations engineer at Maker Foundation that works for bootstrapping MakerDAO, the Maker protocol that allows the creation of DAI out there in the world. And today I'll focus mostly on showing you the possibilities on how you can use DAI mostly in the business. And yeah, that'll be kind of it. So the agenda for today quickly is I'll give you a quick introduction to DAI, if you haven't heard about it. That will give you a sense of the benefits of using DAI, of utilizing DAI. And clearly I'll show you of some business examples that the community have developed so far. So let me introduce you to DAI. DAI is part of this Maker protocol, which is part of this MakerDAO ecosystem. So everything starts with MakerDAO. MakerDAO, it's a group of MKR token holders who together came up with the idea of creating this Maker protocol that will allow the issuance of DAI pretty much, right? So this diagram kind of shows the direction of how it all kind of started. So MKR token holders are the responsible agents in defining the creation of this Maker protocol. And then clearly when this protocol is built up, it's there. These MKR token holders, they become the governors of this system by deciding what collateral assets to be added in the system, different risk parameters and so on, right? So this Maker protocol as well, now you can look at it as a bank as well. Like we have this idea to call it the decentralized central bank, because the purpose of this Maker protocol is to allow the issuance of DAI through credit, right? So that's in essence the MakerDAO ecosystem. Now, how actually DAI is minted? Well, it's pretty simple. You have any person out there who has some tokens, assets that are accepted in the Maker protocol, they can go there and deposit these assets. And according to those assets, they can borrow some DAI against those assets. Clearly, they have to follow some strict risk parameters. They have to see the collateralization ratios for those assets, how much they can borrow, the fees they have to pay, and so on, right? But if they follow all those parameters, they can easily lock in those assets and borrow DAI against those assets, right? That's the overall idea of the Maker protocol. Now, I want to give you this perspective as well of DAI, which is a bit, it gives an idea of how it really works, right? Starting first, like let's look at the Bitcoin first. Bitcoins came many years ago, and the idea was to be used as a peer-to-peer cash system, but Bitcoin has a problem. You can't have a stable price in Bitcoin yet. I don't think it's going to happen because mostly of the value stability trade-off. And this value stability trade-off means mostly the idea that if an asset is scarce, right, its value will always change, will not be stable, right? And because of that, like you probably won't ever have a stable price in Bitcoin to transact. So that leads you to a problem. How could you use Bitcoin to buy your day-to-day things or do actually business activities? It's very hard, right? So looking at that, Maker protocol uses this credit system that is used for millennia, right, to create money, but with a very improved improvements, with good improvements to it, pretty much. Clearly, looking at Euro or any fiat currency out there, it does a good job, but nowadays it's grossly undermanaged. It's used by this centralized authority, let's say, that controls its supply, right, without looking perfectly at the market and seeing how it works very well. So that leads us to suffer from it. And we basically now end up using the same ideas of creating money like dollars or euros, but allow by using it through this blockchain ecosystem, through the Maker protocol. And that clearly has its own advantages, which is very, very great. And clearly now the DAI is always clearly $1, right? It's pegged to the dollar, one DAI, $1. And that is mostly made possible through the dynamic supply DAI, of the currency, right? Of how this DAI is issued on the market, because now anyone who has some assets, they can go to this Maker protocol and borrow against those assets. So in other words, they can be their own banks without going to a bank to borrow money, right? They can basically use this protocol to borrow money to do their business activities, for example, right? So the supply of the DAI currency is always dynamic. It always depends on the market forces out there, right? If there's some demand, then there's some good fees to get from if you want to borrow against, or if there's too much supply, then there's some good fees for you to earn as a DAI holder as well, right? So the market is there, and so far it's improving to work very well. So overall, this is kind of how DAI works, right? DAI is very close to this system of the credit banking system, right? But clearly it's done all on the blockchain through the Maker protocol. So this, from that on, I really want to mention that, yeah, clearly DAI follows all these amazing attributes of a cryptocurrency. DAI issuance is decentralized. That means that there's no central authority or institution or bank issuing DAI according to their wishes. No, DAI is used through this Maker protocol, which is accessible to anyone who has those selected assets, and they can borrow against those assets with DAI, right? So the issuance is very decentralized, which makes it a perfect candidate for the internet money, the real internet money, right? As well, it's truly permissionless. There's no agency can stop you using it. No, some institution can stop you using it. That clearly goes as well to censorship as well. It's very censorship resistant. As long as you have an internet access, you're ready to go pretty much. DAI is very unbiased as well. When you interact with a bank with this Maker protocol, you don't get biased from the issuer by looking at your credit system or where you're from, what's your surname, or any other kind of parameters that might check you nowadays. All the system cares about is that you have the asset to log into the system and borrow against. That's it. There's no other things out there. And clearly, DAI is very transparent. And by transparent, I really mean that you can go to the internet and see how much DAI is out there in circulation. So this image right here actually explains it very well. You can see the total issued DAI in circulation, and then the amount of DAI that is backed by different assets, as you can see. So that's pretty cool, to be honest. So yeah, these are kind of the characteristics of DAI. Now let's look a bit further. So with the creation of DAI that happened 2 years ago or so, it allowed the emergence of this ecosystem, which we call the decentralized finance ecosystem. And in this ecosystem, finally, because we finally got an asset that is stable, that we can use it as a real cash in the digital world, many services appeared. So clearly, we're kind of the first ones to release this banking system that you can borrow against and issue DAI. But then there appeared a lot of exchanges, as you know, decentralized exchanges, and lending markets as well. So you can see that the basic aspects, the basic infrastructure of a market appears, right, in this DeFi ecosystem. And this basic infrastructure now will allow for more interesting projects and different ideas to flourish as well on top, right? So you can see the emergence of this new ecosystem through the DeFi, decentralized finance. So now that I explained you a bit about DAI, and I hope that you got it, now let me show you some examples of DAI in business. Clearly, besides business, there's many consumer-facing applications out there that you can easily use DAI for. Here, I try to kind of bring more applications that the community builds that they focus on the business side, right? So here we go. But before we start, this is just a quick reminder that DAI is really an open money API. You can easily plug into it and have it acceptable in your business application, or just plug it into it and transfer it to another party as well. So DAI is a very first class internet citizen on the internet. So that's very important to notice as well. Yeah, so let me continue. So one of the first applications out there that people came up with was, okay, let's figure out payrolls, right? Clearly, you can just send DAI to an individual that did the service just by doing a transfer, but you like the management of that currency, right? So you see this emergence of applications that they provide this product of managing payrolls and payments for services, right? So one of them is Wisp. You should check them out. You should check out Request as well. You can request a payment in cryptocurrency to anyone through a share of a link, which is pretty awesome. Where also you can basically have now a share of expenses through this application called Lender. So that's pretty cool. Now, another interesting aspect of this digital money is that now you can basically revolutionize how that money is actually transferred or spent. So imagine you getting your salary not by every week or month, but by, let's say, every second or a minute. So Sablier right here, they really came up with this idea of money streaming, which I think has a beautiful impact on the digital world. This now gives room for many other ideas and business applications that you basically can stream your content for per second, per minute, or do a consultancy based on minutes or your choice, right? So the possibilities are endless for business applications out there. And clearly one of the most important aspects of the business applications is to have e-commerce. And you can see that Coinbase, they really went with it as well. So they created this plug and play system where you can basically now accept cryptocurrencies in your web shop, which is fantastic. And besides Coinbase, we have a lot of other applications out there trying to provide you this product suite as well, which is another important aspect is clearly remittances. Like I said before, you can just transfer DAI to your friends as well who already have DAI, but sometimes you want to just transfer DAI, but then on the other end, the other person receives their local currency, right? So Daphne here, I think they're a very good example of that. They allow you to basically send DAI to an individual, and then in the end, they'll receive their local currency. But clearly, besides the remittances, we have now an ecosystem that provides a lot of debit cards that you can have this payment available as well. So slowly and slowly, DAI is entering the real world and creating bridges with the real world and the digital world, right? So nowadays, it gets easier and easier to have a business without even creating a bank account, which for businesses, it's a long process to open a bank account. Yeah, another cool, interesting application that I want to show you is employee expenses. Now you can do expenses with crypto and DAI as well, which is pretty cool. And Wirex here, they, I think, are one of the first in the industry to provide this opportunity. You can basically issue employee cards and manage the expenses with crypto. So that's another interesting aspect of it. But I think the most important example of DeFi and DAI in business is the trade finance part as of now. So in trade finance, we see this amazing organization called Centrifuge. They created a protocol out there that allows now the tokenization of these real world assets into the digital assets, right? So they went on with creating an application called Tin Lake that allows you this pretty much. You can, as a business, you can, let's say, tokenize some of your assets in the company and have them digitalized and add them to the system. And then basically you can borrow against those assets from your assets to improve your business operations. So this is exactly what Console Fright did. Console Fright is a software as a service logistics platform that offers business solutions for freight forwarders. So what they did was they took this invoices from the freight forwarders and tokenized them with TeamLake, and they allow those freight forwarders to basically borrow against those invoices right away, and this allowed them to get instant liquidity on their invoices, which for a small medium enterprise company, sometimes having a liquidity crunch, it's really, really painful for your operations. So Console Freight has, I think, now around 280,000 DAI dollars in loans through this tokenization of invoices through the TeamLake ecosystem, right? And they're very happy with it. So another interesting application of this as well is paper chain. So paper chain, they do the same thing, but with the artists and the streaming of of music, right? So artists usually they have to wait for 30, 60 days to receive their invoice, the money on the invoice through this platform. Basically, the artist now can start getting that money quite upfront, and then all in the back end is it's processed through this protocol and the final payment of the invoices and so on, right? So it's a nice application up there that you can see that it finally provides, let's say, real world value. Yeah, so this one is another one. This one is focused mostly in Southeast Asia. Shuttle One is it's a company that provides remittances, B2B loans, savings accounts, and they partnered with TeamLake and Centrifuge to allow this Happy Fresh gig economy grocery delivery service to as well tokenize their invoices to basically ramp up their operations. And this actually happened now during the pandemic in April, where they had a surge of customers and requiring to buy stuff from online. So they basically hired a lot of new employees. So through that, they basically unlocked some liquidity from their illiquid assets from the company through this protocol to basically get access to the cash and give it and pay the employees and so on, right? So it really, this service really provides an improvement in business processes overall. So I want to kind of finish this up with a testimonial from Console Freight. They were very happy with this. The process was very simple, and TeamLake that allows the tokenization of these assets really allowed them to improve and increase their operational efficiencies. And I think this is a real example, finally, of all these promises of the blockchain back in the day, right? So if you were a bit earlier in the blockchain ecosystem, you saw all these hyped ideas about what it can do, right? But now you can finally see these examples come to life and actually do a big impact. But now you don't see the hype anymore behind it because, yeah, people see that it works and they benefit from it, right? So it's a bit different. But with this, I just want to give you a taste of what we have here in our decentralized finance ecosystem and what's to come as well. This is just a start, and in a couple of months or in a year, you'll see that there's a lot of new applications out there that's really tend their focus to amazing problems that are going to be fixed. So for me, this is kind of it. Thank you very much.